Some researchers out of London created a robot that was inspired by Venom, and it looked really cool. It might actually be useful for space travel. If you want something that's going to be able to change its body form, the answer is always going to be nanobots. You're looking at carbon nanofibers that have been infused with silicone, and depending on the density of the nanobots within the silicone, they can take on different body forms. And then electricity can be used to conduct through the robot, and then that can control how it behaves. It can make twisting actions. It is really pretty weird and surprisingly useful. However, yes, it is controlled by electrical waves, and that might be a problem if you want to use it for people. I did calculate this. It would take about 170,000 individual nanobots to have enough power to lift me. Essentially, each individual is about as strong as a fly, and that makes me think it's going to take about 170,000 flies to lift me. I'm concerned, and I think I gotta redo my math. But yes, they can be quite strong. Now, you can do a variety of things with them. This one had a snail shell placed on it and watched it move across a ledge. Yes, they can mimic the action of real creatures, like snails. There is the concern that because they're operating with electrical fields and they are, conductive, if this were to work directly with people, you're liable to lose that charge by going into a person. But they did imagine that it would be useful for space travel. Because they can be controlled and could even be operated in a vacuum, it could be useful for gripping stuff like cargo. It could be used to deliver stuff. Of course, they would have to figure out not losing electrical charge to the environment because all of the tests in a lab were performed, in a controlled place. I really like the fact that they imagined them and actually created a model of them in a little stickman form. They're controllable without having to have a tiny computer chip in them. Just because of the way they're oriented, they can now be turned into all sorts of different shapes. This is a fairly new concept in robotics, having something that's capable of changing as they go rather than having to be pre-programmed. Turns out you have to share some things with biology to be able to do that. And yes, it was inspired by Venom. A lot of the toys you see with similar orientations are the same concept, Usually they're with iron, ferrous liquid. This is carbon. I talk about it all the time. I love carbon nanofibers. They're going to make robots of the future. And robots of the now? Shape-shifting nanobots are all the rage. A lot of them are used in biology, but we're seeing them move into industry, especially with space travel. And one of the things that you may not consider is when you're using nanobots, it's soft robotics. You may have heard me talk about it, but traditional AI systems are terrible at operating soft robotics, so things that are squishy. What you have to do to operate something that looks anything like a living creature, you're going to have neuromorphic AI. So AI that's designed to look like our brains. So that's who's going to be running the nanobots, FYI. Also, in the world of science news, I'm not going to make a whole video on it, but somebody made a two-dimensional computer. It's functionally two-dimensional. Think molecule-thin transistors. It bothers me, but people think it's going to be useful. It's made out of molybdenum. I have a degree in chemistry. I'm never going to be able to say molybdenum correctly.